At my sister's engagement party, she raised her glass and said, "Some of us find love, some of us just fund it." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I just smiled, walked to the gift table, and took back the envelope holding the $9,000 honeymoon tickets I bought. Then I texted the travel agent. 5 minutes later, she checked her phone and started screaming. The champagne glass caught the restaurant's warm lighting as my sister Brooke raised it high, her engagement ring sparkling like a small constellation. The room fell quiet. Expectant faces turned toward her as she prepared to make her toast. Dean stood beside her, beaming with pride, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist. "Some of us find love," Brooke announced with a practiced smile, "and some of us just fund it." The laughter erupted immediately. Guests doubled over, wine glasses clinking in appreciation of what they perceived as witty wordplay. Dean laughed the hardest, his chest puffing with obvious delight at his fiancée's clever humor. Mom's face lit up with that familiar expression of maternal pride, the one reserved for Brooke's shining moments. Even Dad tried to maintain neutrality, though I caught the telltale twitch in his jaw that meant he was fighting his instincts. I stood frozen in the back of the room, champagne untouched in my hand, watching my sister bask in the approval she'd just earned at my expense. The laughter felt like physical blows, each chuckle another reminder that I was the punchline, the cautionary tale, the brother who couldn't catch a break in love but could always be counted on to open his wallet. While they were still laughing, I set down my glass and walked calmly to the gift table. There, nestled between a chrome waffle maker and an overpriced set of salad bowls, sat a gold envelope. My gift. $9,000 worth of carefully planned paradise. 10 days in Hawaii, oceanfront resort, private snorkeling tours, dinner reservations at the finest restaurants Maui had to offer. I'd worked extra hours tutoring kids after school, driven for rideshare companies on weekends, lived on ramen and hoped for 3 months to make it happen. I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, and with hands that shook just slightly, texted my travel agent, "Cancel the Hawaii trip. Full refund if possible." It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like necessity. 5 minutes later, Brooke's phone buzzed. I watched from across the room as her face transformed, the confident smile melting into confusion, then horror. Her eyes locked onto mine with laser precision, and she started calling my name with increasing panic. Dean was already moving toward her, asking what was wrong, but I was already walking toward the exit. The second I stepped outside, the cold air hit my lungs like salvation. My heartbeat, which had been hammering against my ribs, finally began to slow. I made it halfway to my car before I heard the clicking of heels behind me. "Tyler, come on. It was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." I kept walking. Dean appeared beside her, throwing in his own half-hearted attempt at damage control. "You should lighten up, man. You know she didn't mean anything by it." Neither of them asked why I had taken the envelope. They didn't even know what they'd lost yet. I got in my car without a word and drove away, watching in my rearview mirror as Brooke stood there in her white cocktail dress, arms folded, Dean whispering urgently in her ear like the voice of reason he'd never actually been. At home, I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat in the dark. My phone began its relentless buzzing. Brooke, Dean, Mom, even random relatives who somehow felt entitled to weigh in on family drama they barely understood. Everyone except Dad, and I knew why. He was the only person in that room who hadn't laughed, the only one who saw through Brooke's performance to the cruelty underneath. By morning, I had 36 unread messages, 5 missed calls, and a group chat that had been renamed passive-aggressive, with my name prominently featured. I didn't respond to any of it. At noon, I heard my front door unlock. Only one person still had a key. Mom walked in like she owned the place, took one look at me on the couch, and launched into her attack. "You embarrassed your sister. You walked out like a child. People were asking what happened all night." She paced while she talked, as if movement would make her words hit harder. I stayed seated, arms folded, waiting for her to ask what had happened from my perspective. She never did. "You could have at least told her if it was something that expensive," she said finally. That stopped me. I looked up sharply. So Brooke hadn't told her what was in the envelope. $9,000, I said quietly. I paid for their entire honeymoon. Flights, hotel, excursions, food, everything. And I canceled it right after her toast. Mom froze for exactly 1 second, just long enough for me to see the moment when someone realizes they've been running their mouth without all the facts. But then, as expected, she recovered with practiced ease. That's not the point, Tyler. You still made a scene. You embarrassed her in front of everyone. Not a thank you. Not a wow. Just a pivot back to how I'd made Brooke look bad. I'm not going to the wedding, I told her. That's ridiculous. If you don't fix this, you'll regret it. Will Brooke regret what she said? She didn't answer that. That evening, Dad called. Only once, no lectures. I get it, Tyler, he said, followed by silence that somehow contained more understanding than all of Mom's words combined. The next day brought a voicemail from Brooke. She was crying, telling me she had no idea the gift was so expensive, that she was just trying to be funny, that Dean felt horrible too. But it wasn't the tears that got to me, it was the way she said my name, soft and manipulative, the same voice she'd used as a child when she'd break something and blame me, knowing Mom would believe her version of events. I didn't call back. 2 days later, I got a text from Mom that snapped everything into perfect focus. Your father says you're being dramatic. Maybe stop punishing your sister over a joke. But I had just talked to Dad that morning. He'd told me to ignore the drama, that he was proud of me for standing up for myself. So I called him again. Did you really tell Mom I was being dramatic? Of course not, he said immediately. Your mom's just trying to get everyone back to normal. Normal. That word made me want to laugh. Normal in our house meant Brooke always got her way. It meant I was expected to absorb whatever came my way and stay quiet about it. It meant Dad kept his head down while Mom rewrote reality until it suited her version of events. The next day, I walked out of work to find Brooke and Dean waiting by my car like nothing had happened. She tried to smile. Dean attempted casual indifference. Tyler, come on. Let's just talk. We didn't know, okay? Dean's voice carried that particular blend of entitlement and false sincerity he'd perfected over the years. We're really excited about the trip. It means more to us than you realize. This isn't about the money, I said. Then what's it about? Respect. They stood there like I was speaking a foreign language. I got in my car and left them standing in the afternoon sun, not caring where they went or if Brooke had another breakdown. For once, I wasn't going to be the one to fold. That night, Dad called again, asking if I was okay. I'm fine, I told him. Just tired. I understand. Your mom's on the warpath, trying to make me talk sense into you. Don't bother. He didn't argue, but I knew this wasn't over. People like Brooke don't lose gracefully, and my mother doesn't lose at all. A few days later, staring at my bank statement, I remembered something important. The car. The silver Toyota Highlander that Brooke and Dean had been driving was technically still in my name. I'd co-signed the loan 16 months ago when Brooke was between jobs, something about Uber being too expensive and public transport being beneath her dignity. She couldn't qualify for financing on her own, and Mom had framed it as a small way to help family. I hadn't seen the car in weeks, but I was still making the payments, still covering the insurance. If anything went wrong, it was my responsibility. Every mile they drove, every tank of gas they bought, all under my name. When Brooke called again with her new tone of half apology, half manipulation, I listened just long enough to confirm that she and Dean were still driving it daily. Then I waited a few more days, letting the idea crystallize into certainty. Early one morning, I pulled the trigger. I logged into the financing app and reported the vehicle as being driven without authorization. Then I called the insurance company and froze the coverage. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat back and waited. That evening, Brooke called me screaming. Apparently, she and Dean had been on their way to a bridal fitting when the car got flagged during a routine traffic check. Dean tried to talk their way out of it, but the officer wouldn't budge. They were told it was a registration issue and were forced to leave the car at an impound lot. She demanded I fix it immediately. I don't owe you anything, I told her calmly. Not after the toast, not after the messages, not after the way you tried to gaslight me into thinking I overreacted. Things will only get worse if you keep pushing me. She hung up. The next day, Mom called, not to ask, but to scold. I'd gone too far, she said. I was sabotaging my sister's life out of spite. If I had any decency, I'd help them get the car back. Do you want to co-sign the loan now that you're so invested? I asked. She didn't answer. Dad called that night. He was quieter than usual, but I could tell he wasn't angry. Are you sure you want to go this route? Yeah, I'm sure. This isn't revenge, Dad. It's closure. He sighed deeply. Then you do what you have to do. That should have been the end of it. I should have walked away and let them deal with the consequences. But then Brooke showed up at my door, alone. She looked exhausted, no makeup, hoodie pulled up, dark circles under her eyes. Not the usual polished version of herself, but something hollow and fragile. She stood there for a long time before speaking. "We're in trouble, Ty." She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Dean had gotten involved in a real estate deal with a friend of a friend, she explained. It was supposed to be easy money. Buy cheap, renovate fast, resell for profit. Except halfway through, the city shut down the site due to code violations. The contractor disappeared, the friend stopped answering calls, and now a private lender was threatening legal action. "How much?" I asked. 60, she said without blinking. They'd burned through their savings, maxed out credit cards, and apparently owed money to someone who wasn't the type to send polite email reminders. The tension in her voice wasn't just about money, it was about fear. Real fear. Then she asked for $55,000. Just a loan, she said. Just to help cover it before things escalated. They'd pay me back in 6 months, tops. They were already talking to a new investor. This was just a short-term emergency. I stared at her like she was speaking another language. $55,000. That wasn't pocket change. That was everything. My savings, my emergency fund, the security I'd built after my last relationship fell apart, and I realized no one was ever going to save me but myself. She hugged me before she left, quick and mechanical. I didn't hug back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake thinking about every time I'd been the one to bend for her. When she crashed my car and I took the blame, when she dropped out of college and told mom it was my idea, when she borrowed money, just until Friday, and disappeared for months. This was different. This was bigger. But deep down, I wanted to believe her. Maybe because I still wanted to believe she was my sister, not just someone I used to trust. So I did it. I walked into the bank and signed for a home equity line of credit against my condo. I told myself it was temporary, that she'd pay me back, that I wasn't an idiot for doing this. I transferred the money that same day. No legal agreement, no contract, just a text from her, "Thank you," followed by a voice note, "You seriously saved us. You have no idea. I love you." That was the last thing I heard from her. Week 1. No response. I told myself they were just busy, maybe fixing the deal, maybe too ashamed to call. Week 2. Still nothing. I called Dean. Straight to voicemail. Week 3. Mom told me they'd gone off the grid, taken a trip to clear their heads. She didn't sound worried, more annoyed, like they'd forgotten to include her in their plans. "Where did they go?" I asked. "I don't know," she said with a shrug. I drove to their apartment. Empty. Car gone, mail piling up at the door. Week 4. I filed the report. Fraud, theft, whatever they wanted to call it. The officer looked like he'd seen this story too many times before. He took my statement and said they'd look into it, but I could tell from his expression that he didn't expect much. That night, I got a voicemail from Mom. "How could you report your own sister? Do you know what this will do to her? To us." It wasn't concern or grief in her voice. It was fury. I'd exposed the lie, broken the illusion, and she hated that more than anything. She called again the next day, crying this time. She didn't know what they were planning, she said. She thought they just needed space. She never imagined they'd do something like this to me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't trust her words anymore. Dad called too. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I believe you. You did the right thing." But right didn't mean easy. I was down $55,000, sleeping in a place I might have to sell, and my sister had vanished without a trace. 3 months. That's how long they were gone. I kept checking the case number online, refreshing the police report system like something would change. It never did. Every day, I stared at the same open investigation status while my bank sent friendly reminders that my HELOC balance wasn't going to pay itself. I stopped answering unknown numbers, half hoping it might be them, half dreading that it was. I lived in silence, no cable, no gym membership. I sold my watch, the nice one my ex had given me for my 30th birthday, and pawned a few other things I never thought I'd have to part with. I ate canned soup for dinner more nights than I'd care to admit. Then, one Thursday afternoon in the middle of setting up cones for soccer practice, I got the call. It was the detective, and his tone was different this time. Colder, more factual. They'd found them. Dean and Brooke had been picked up in Arizona, in Flagstaff. They'd been living in a rental cabin, off-grid enough to avoid nosy neighbors but not clever enough to stay truly hidden. Dean had been working under a fake name, detailing RVs for cash. Brooke was taking on graphic design jobs online, using someone else's PayPal account. A friend had helped set it up. The money was being laundered through a third party. It took investigators weeks to track the accounts, but they got them both arrested without incident. That night, I didn't celebrate. I sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours, staring at the stack of bills I had organized into neat categories. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, HELOC. All with my name on them. All brutally real. What Brooke and Dean had done wasn't just selfish, it was criminal. And now it was going to be treated that way. A few days later, I got a call from a correctional facility. I hesitated, then answered. It was Brooke. Her voice cracked before she even said my name. She started crying almost immediately, saying she was sorry, that Dean had told her it would only be for a little while, that they just needed to buy some time, that they always intended to come back. She said my name like it was a key she hoped still worked. I didn't say a word, just listened as she begged me not to press charges. The DA was talking about prison time, she said. Dean was blaming her. She didn't know what to do. She needed her brother. When she paused, waiting for me to say something, I hung up. That same day, I spoke with the district attorney. The case was strong. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, grand larceny. They had enough evidence to take it all the way. Do you want to move forward? The DA asked. Are you willing to testify? Are you pursuing restitution? Yes, I said to everything. I wasn't backing down. When news of the charges broke to the rest of the family, the reactions were exactly what I expected. Mom called first, not to ask if I was okay, not to apologize, but to cry and tell me I was tearing the family apart. Brooke didn't deserve prison, she said. I was being cruel. I should have handled it privately. Do you even know how much money they took from me? I asked. She didn't answer. Then she said Brooke was just scared, that she'd trusted the wrong man, that deep down she never meant to hurt me. She didn't just hurt me, I told her. She tried to ruin me. And the only reason she's scared now is because she got caught. Dad called too, not to change my mind but just to check in. I knew it would come to this, he said quietly. I'm moving forward, I told him. I don't care what anyone says. Good, he replied. Let it burn. The trial was set for late fall. I took time off work and started putting together paperwork with a lawyer. Not for revenge, but to try to claw back something, anything. There was one night when I listened to that last voicemail Brooke had sent, the one where she said I'd saved them. Her voice had sounded so light, like nothing in the world mattered. You saved them, she'd said. She was right. I had saved them once. I wouldn't do it again. The trial ended quietly. No outbursts, no last-minute speeches, no emotional breakdowns like you see in movies. Just 2 guilty pleas, a stack of evidence, and a judge reading out sentences like it was just another file in a long line of bad decisions. 18-month state prison, both of them. Brooke and Dean had struck a plea deal, mostly to avoid the public embarrassment of a full trial. The evidence was airtight: wire transfers, screenshots, bank statements. My lawyer said Dean's name was on enough documentation to bury him. Brooke's name was on the rest. Their plan hadn't been clever, just reckless and fast and arrogant. The prosecution had no problem proving intent. You don't vanish for 3 months and live under fake names if you're planning to make things right. The court ordered restitution. They were forced to return 90% of the money, not out of remorse but because investigators had frozen their accounts before they could drain everything. That final 10% was gone, spent on whatever they thought they needed to survive. Fast food, gas, hotel rooms, cheap escapes that cost me more than money. I received a check from the state a few weeks after sentencing, a cold, clinical reimbursement with no apology, no explanation, just numbers and a signature. It was better than nothing, but it didn't bring back what I'd really lost. Time, security, my ability to trust people without second-guessing their intentions. Brooke didn't look at me once during the sentencing. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor the entire time. Dean, on the other hand, smirked like he couldn't believe it had come to this, like he still thought he'd somehow talk his way out of it. When the handcuffs went on, he glanced at me for just a second. I didn't flinch. I think that bothered him more than anything. Mom cried, of course. Not for me, not really, She cried for them. Afterward, she told me this would destroy Brooke's life, that I should have tried harder to forgive, to find a way without courts and lawyers. What would you have done if I had vanished and stolen $55,000 from Brooke? I asked. She didn't answer. She never had answers, just excuses. Dad didn't come to court. When I called him afterward and told him what had happened, he said, "Good. About time." That was it. No surprise, no sympathy. He'd seen through them long before I had. In some way, I think he was relieved that it was finally over. And it was, for the most part. The fallout was swift. Brooke and Dean became pariahs. No one in the family wanted to be associated with them. Friends stopped mentioning their names, relatives quietly removed them from wedding invitations and holiday dinners, Facebook posts disappeared. It was like they had never existed. Everyone suddenly remembered that something had always seemed off about them, though none of them had bothered to say anything at the time. But what no one expected was what happened to me. I became respected, even quietly admired. No one said it outright, but I saw it in the way people treated me. Relatives who used to brush me off started calling for advice, asking how I'd managed to stay so level-headed through it all. I'd just been the gym teacher, the single guy who drove a beat-up car and didn't say much. Now I was the one who'd stood up, the one who didn't fold, the one who made the hard decision no one else in the family ever would have made. Thanksgiving was awkward that year. There was an empty chair no one talked about, but I noticed who people sat closer to, who they asked to carve the turkey, who they trusted to pass judgment when someone brought up financial troubles. They mentioned Brooke less and less, until eventually they didn't mention her at all. I still get letters from her sometimes. She sends them through Mom, mostly, short, vague updates with no real apologies, more like sad little reminders that she exists, that she's still waiting for the world to forgive her and move on. Mom keeps hoping. She holds on to those letters like they're proof that her daughter is still good underneath it all. She talks about the day Brooke gets out like it's something to look forward to, but even she knows things are never going back to how they were. They chose this. They chose to lie, to run, to steal from the one person who never asked them for anything. So now we all live with the consequences. They're in prison. I'm rebuilding, slowly and quietly, with a very different understanding of what family really means. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to burn the bridge completely. I didn't just burn it, I watched it fall, and I didn't look back.